Retiree is me is back, and I'm fully rejuvenated. I've got a whole new game plan, and thanks to each and every one of you for your recommendations. You know, we talked about moving out to the country and sharing what that whole country lifestyle was all about. We're going to continue living that lifestyle, and certainly with time we're going to transition. However, some things have changed, and you know, if you saw that last vlog that we did in Hawaii, we've been back now for just under a week. And some things have come to mind, you know, some conversations with the family, some discussions, some thoughts, some really deep thoughts. Of course, life changes a lot, and it changes constantly. And, you know, sometimes we make these changes. Sometimes, you know, we want to go down one path, and then a bunch of circumstances sort of kick us over and we end up taking another path. And that's kind of how I feel like things have been in recent years. And I truly believe if we're not adaptable, then what good is life if we can't be constantly moving and navigating life as the different hurdles come our way? Well, what I want to share with you is some thoughts I've been having. Retiree is me is back. Now, there's been a lot of great recommendations, some great channel names, because I did suggest that we're going to be moving to the country. We still have a place out in the way out in the sticks, and we will be spending time there. And I will be sharing some of those experiences. However, I believe from what I've taken away from the overall responses, there's a lot of disappointment in the idea of transitioning out of Retiree as me. But on top of that, after having these chats with the family, it becomes ever more clear that now is not the time to leave Retiree as me. And now is not the time to go full scale out of town. And the reason I say that is, what we ended up finding was, one of our daughters now is engaged. There's going to be a wedding coming up. We've got our son, he's finishing up high school, and we've got our other daughters that are just involved in work and all kinds of other fun and frivolity. So there's clearly a lot going on between marriages, between schooling, between transition through life in a lot of different ways, and very importantly, I can't forget the fact that this channel, Retiree is Me, was really born from the experience that I personally had, and a lot of you have the same experience or very similar. You see, as we get older, and it's not even older, I mean, as you get older, there's other challenges. Certainly, we talk about ageism, and that's something that I bring up regularly. And ageism is real. And I believe once you're sort of in your 50s, your 40s, your 50s, if you're not holding on to that job real tight, and if you don't have an evacuation plan, things can be really, really dicey. Now, that said, we know, you know, with the advent of AI, we see that's changing a lot for everybody. You know, whether it's jobs, technology, you know, even movie makers are getting impacted by AI. AI is taking over and changing the whole landscape of the, I guess, the workplace, if you will. Now, what I found, and the more I've been sitting around thinking, we had almost 2 weeks in Hawaii. I've been sitting around this whole week. Not sitting around, I mean, I've been creating videos for my other channel, but there's been a lot of downtime and a lot of time to ponder the very thing that a lot of you are going through, a lot of what I went through. Now, see, I've sort of popped out on the other side, and, you know, I've gone through a significant amount of loss in that first year. So what I'll say is 2024 was an absolutely obliterating year. Kind of started out with my mother passing, and then it transitioned, of course, into the work front, or the other way around, I should say, because the end of February was I lost my job. By the end of March, my mother had passed, and my father had passed 3 years earlier. Lots have been going on in this last year. In the meantime, there's lots going on now. Okay, so what I want to do is sort of bring Retiree is Me 2.0, if I can. And it will be more walks and talks, and it will be more experiences, and it won't be about numbers crunching, because there's plenty of channels out there that talk about the numbers. I mean, it takes you 10 minutes to figure out the numbers. It takes you a half an hour to sit down with your financial advisor and put together the numbers for them to make sense. So those are all very important factors, because we have to afford to live. But it becomes much bigger than that. It's more than just the numbers. The numbers are going to say, okay, you've got to be prepared or you're not. The numbers tell you how much you need, how long you can, how long before you can retire. And the numbers will also tell you what sort of budget you have. Those are extremely important factors, and definitely some factors you don't want to disregard when it comes to retirement or quitting your job or trying a new job. Because this channel really is a bigger picture. It's not just about retirement. It's about living your best life outside of work. See, because a lot of people get too dialed into their jobs and believe that's all that they have. But the job front is not everything. As a matter of fact, outside of paying for the things that really matter, like your life and your lifestyle and your family and food, which are all critically important, there's something more important. Think back hundreds of years ago, even thousands of years ago, and think of the caveman, okay? Think of some of those people back in the day. Did they have a job? No. How about hundreds of years ago? Did they have a job? In many cases, not. They found ways to survive, though. Humankind has been around forever, okay? I mean, and when we talk about the dinosaurs, we can go as far back as that or beyond. But at the end of the day, was there corporate jobs back then? Were there 9-to-5 grills back then? No, none of that existed. But somehow we made it on and we moved on. Now, this modern Western society and capitalism and all of that is good and it's bad. But at the end of the day, sure, we need to work, we need to survive. But there's an element that I think truly believe that people have gone too far one way. And that's focus on work, disregarding your kid's birthday, disregarding an anniversary, possibly disregarding that golf game that you want to go out and do because you have a passion for golf. But now, you know what, you sort of give that up because the boss asked you to work an extra night or two here and there, and you gave up your weekends because they asked you to put in a little extra time there, or you want to be competitive within your group or your peer group, and you're hoping to get the next promotion, so you're willing to spend more time in the office, come in early, leave late. You get the gist. But none of that leads to a good place, because when employers see that you're willing to do whatever it takes, then they start taking advantage of you. And I experienced that in my workplace. But it's not about that. So enough about that. We're moving on. Retiree is Me 2.0, which is going to be really more focused on the lifestyle. Affordability, of course, but more about the feelings, the thoughts, thought-provoking ideas, they're challenging the very notion of work in the first place. How important is it? I get a kick out of a lot of these, it's a very polarizing conversation, and I understand that. On one hand, you have people like me preaching that, life is short and you've got to enjoy it to the fullest. And then on the other side, you see those people that are saying, you know what, because we live longer these days, because science shows that, the average life expectancy is getting longer, because, research studies show that we're able to work longer, that pensions, will be there later, and the motivation to develop or earn a bigger pension comes with sticking around in your job longer. A lot of those facts are there. And there's a lot of advocates for the fact that you should work longer because we're living longer as a species. But again, we've spoken about this on video after video after video about we're living longer, but not necessarily better. Life expectancy is going up, but not necessarily the quality of life. They're holding you on longer with oxygen bottles. They're holding you on longer with medication. And granted, that's good. I mean, it's better than not being around, but trust me when I say I've been very close to somebody who's dealing with all those modern medicines, and it's not pleasant. So here is the notion about affordability, the idea about, I look around now in the news and, I hate politics with a passion. What I do love is, talking about, affordability, how people are living. How are they enjoying their work, their jobs, their employment status? More importantly, how are they living their lives outside of work? Because there is a lot in current events right now, but really none of that really matters unless it impacts you, right? I mean, there's lots of things that are said all over on social media every single day. Go googlenews.com and you'll see there's no shortage of front page news. But get all up behind you. And I'll tell you, after our 2 weeks in Hawaii and basically having very little to do more than worrying about which coffee house we're stopping at, which beach or which pool we're stopping at and spending the next 3 hours at, or what to do in the afternoon for fun and frivolity, living that lifestyle really brought to mind about life. And it, again, reinforced even further about how we should be living our lives. First of all, we should be living our lives well, but look internally. Are there things that we can help ourselves, do things better for ourselves and our families? And again, even further to that, jobs. Jobs are nothing more than the means to the end, okay? The means to the end. So as I talk on and I'm rambling on about, about this whole, the future of Retiree is me, and it will be a future because I do plan to bring that back full. And I really do miss that. I miss chatting with each and every one of you. The routine. But even just having those chats, even having those moments, I read the comments, and there's times where I struggle to even keep up with the comments because of the popularity. And a lot of people are resonating with this idea of your job isn't everything. And it is important, but it's not everything. I had a great career, and maybe my timing was good. Maybe my timing was at a point where I sort of was able to just about round out a career, maybe cut a wee bit short, but I got the vast majority of my career underway. And fortunately now I'm able to enjoy life a lot more. I realize things are tough. Things are tough all over, and they're not getting easier on the job front. My big message for that is, if you're a younger worker and you're in your 20s and your 30s, maybe even your 40s, create that plan. See, for me, it's really about the exit plan. Think about, what do you think you need to budget? Where do you need to be financially? Do you want to have a house? Do you not want to have a house? Sometimes people argue that renting is better, then you're more mobile. You don't have to be committed and locked down to a house, and you can move around. Why do you think the van life is so popular? I mean, there's so many choices. There's so many options out there. And that's the beauty. Life is full of choice. But one thing that's no choice is living your life if you're locked down, cooped up for 50 hours a week at your job. Again, we need to do something, and we always have, at some level we have to pay our dues. And I've said this before, you work harder earlier, or you're really going to work hard later. So that's why my suggestion, if you're a younger worker and you don't see yourself working into your 60s, I didn't. The best thing that I could promote and suggest is have that plan. Budget out, figure out what you, through investments, through assets that you can liquidate later on, through whatever it is. You got to spend, there's a certain amount of time that you have to build. And fortunately for me, I did some of that building. Now I have some options, and we can decide, well, do you liquidate? Do you part stuff out? Through investments, of course, through pension, through assets. Then you have choice. If you don't build in early in life, it's very difficult to have choice later in life, you see. But outside of that, you've got to recognize that at some point, the job just doesn't matter. And it's very, very important for me to nail this home, because we all have these mixed ideas, these mixed thoughts about, what life should be and how we should live our best lives. And some people believe it's working 9 to 5 till they're 80, but that way it affords them to buy a new car every 3 years. It affords them that big vacation. It affords the big house on the lake. It affords all those things, but that comes with a big but. I've seen some of that, and at the end of the day, we have those toys. We like that type of lifestyle. Who doesn't like that type of lifestyle? But just ask yourself, what's the better or the lesser of two evils? So if you can own some of these assets and transition them into a retirement place, where now all of a sudden you've got some of these toys, but you're retired, that's the ultimate place to be. And I believe I found that happy medium. And for me, I did buy a bit of an oddball car that a lot of people wouldn't agree with, and that's fine. That's totally cool, because frugality is the key to to happiness. I really do believe that. I did buy a pricey car, but we've also talked about the fact that I love cars. Cars have been, if there's one passion in life, well, okay, I've got a couple big ones, but it's a guilty pleasure. What can I say? I love cars and I love family. And whether it's traveling, traveling with family, spending time with family. Last night we sat back and watched the Oilers hockey game, watched them take that game to tie it up 2-2. What a spectacular finish. And as we watch these playoffs roll on, I hope that the Oilers take it all the way. Now I know for Floridians, I know you guys are cheering for your team. That's cool. I've got family down in Florida too, so I get it. It's cool, but it's fun to sort of, razz each other a little bit. The bottom line is, it's really, life is about worth living, finding that balance, frugality to the point of living. Okay, you don't want to be frugal, and this is, I truly believe this. Okay, you don't want to be frugal to the point where you're skipping that sandwich, you're skipping that holiday, you're living in a tent, and realistically you're not doing anything, because what's the point? You're not enjoying life. But frugality, when used as a tool to leverage to get you to a place, an asset, a home, a location, early retirement, quitting your job, whatever. Frugality to allow you, to facilitate, to get you into that spot, that's what I'm talking about. So there's a frugality to have a short-term, what's the word I'm looking for? Maybe you know what I'm talking, putting the word in my mouth there. Putting a lot of things on hold for the short term, if you have a game plan, and that game plan will allow you to get you to where you need to be to enjoy your life in the way you need to live it. That's what I'm talking about. Frugality to get you there, to leverage that. But I've also known people that have lived so frugally, they don't do anything, they don't spend anything, and they make a ton of money. And then they even avoided having kids because they felt that was going to have a major impact on their finances. So they skipped all of it. They don't travel, they don't invest, they don't do anything other than put away in their TFSAs and maximize their investments. And lo and behold, a couple people I know that did that, lived their entire life like that, popped out in their late 50s with a serious medical diagnosis. And now everything has changed. I just don't want to see anybody deal with that. I believe frugality in the way of supporting your end goal, your end means. Does it mean early retirement? For me, it did. Means I had to sell a car, means I had to double down, invest, and do some things on the financial end to help support it. 100%. But this expensive car I bought, which I'm going to be sharing on my other channel, came in a way when I was still gainfully employed, and I didn't see necessarily, I wasn't happy at work at that time, but I didn't necessarily totally see the writing on the wall yet. I put a deposit, the car has shown up 3 years later, I have it now, and I'm going to share that whole vlog over on that other channel, and I'll link that in here. If any of you are interested in maybe getting on board and following that true vlog, that's going to be my lifestyle vlog about cars, because that's my passion. I love life, I love family, but I love cars, and cars are something that's always made me tick. So that's going to be something that I'm going to be exploring on the other channel. Rather than breaking this channel up, because I believe this channel really is focused on those complicated decisions, those living frugally, to make those commitments happen by living, even with a lower budget, living in a certain way to support the means to the end. That's what this channel is about. This channel is about questioning the reality of life versus work. Questioning how important work really is versus life. We don't live forever. And when I hear governments extending these retirement ages, 65 to 67, 67, now it's debated at 70, And then you see what's going on, the waste that's going on at government levels everywhere across the globe. This is not unique to any country. This is just, it seems like a colossal catastrophe of monumental proportions. So pardon me. But life is important, and it's worth your life, worth living, okay? In your best way. The best way isn't working. We all got to work. We all need a job at some level, unless you have a small business. I've managed to move on, and I'm going to talk more about those kind of things. But I believe after having a fairly relatively long career, which, you know, there was a time when you believed saying, I have a long, fruitful career. That used to be, yeah. But to say you have a long, successful career isn't necessarily, doesn't carry the same meaning that it once did. Because all that means is you've been tied down for the last 35, 40 years. Does that mean a good thing, or is that not such a good thing? To me, nowadays, looking back in retrospect, I don't know if I would have retired a whole lot earlier anyhow, but I said my age was 55, and that would have put me around that, you know, around that 35 years in the workforce. So it was a pretty long career. But most people would suggest I had another 10 years in me to work. Well, maybe. But I'm enjoying the lifestyle too much right now. And as long as you can make a go of it, why not? So that's what this is all about, everybody. Great career. But there's something that clicked in me. It said, you know what? Life's more important. And looking at, you know, now that I'm away from the job front a little bit, I'm able to look back, you know, from more of the 35,000 feet rather than the 5,000 feet view. You're able to now see what the corporate world is all about. And it's about creating a bunch of trained, I don't know, use the word fill in the blank here, right? A bunch of trained right there. Drop it in the comment section below, a bunch of trained blank. I'd like to hear your thoughts. Trained blank. Please drop it down. That would be, that's kind of how I see it. And I lived it. So, you know, it is what it is. But all you can do is live and learn and enjoy life moving forward. The FIRE movement, you know what, maybe. Some people are, that's really revving up. That might have been a little early for me, but I get it. Like, I totally get why people are doing that. They realize that a lot of young workers are realizing that they may never own a house or afford to own a house. A lot of young, workers are realizing that kind of what's the point? You know, keep working, keep pouring the money into taxes, and really after 5-10 years, you really don't have much to show for it, other than a clapped out car because you took a car loan out 5 years earlier. So a lot of people are realizing that there's a lot more to life. And so the FIRE movement, the idea of you know, working a little bit and then going on an extended holiday, then working a little bit and going on an extended holiday. Can that get old? Maybe. Does that set you up for success later on in life? If you do it right, if you truly play that game and you utilize a portion of, during your work session, you save enough money for your next experience, but you also ensure that your employer is putting away X amount, or you put away X amount for investments, and you do that consistently, it ensures that when you wake up and all of a sudden you're 55 or 50 or 60, and it's time to say, you know what, it's time to relax and enough of this, then at least you'll have some money put away. So I'm for all of it. I'm really a little bit more on the lifestyle than I am on the work front. Work is important. I preach to my kids, you've got to have a foundation, you've got to have a good job, and more importantly, do it for yourself. Even better if you can start up a business, because then you sort of balance your own life. You hustle for a while, and they say business owners, especially in the first 5 years, often spend far more time working, in many cases double the amount of hours that it would be if you were a worker bee. But the catch is, at least you have the availability to make those choices to take off in the middle of the afternoon, maybe go golfing, you know, on a Thursday morning when everybody else is at work. So that's something I instill in even my family is you've got to work, you got to pay your hard dues early on so that life is a little easier later on. That's the point. And that's ultimately where we're at today. So we're going to talk a lot more about this. I know many of you had some great suggestions on the new channel title. That's because I was asking for help. I was asking for some thoughts about living that outdoor lifestyle. But after, you know, chatting with the family and realizing that we may have to, you know, we're probably going to stick around here, at least for the time being. That said, there will be excursions. We will be doing out-of-town activities, and I will share those momentary experiences very much like I did with the Hawaii experience. I know the video didn't do all that well commercially, and maybe a very limited number of you even enjoyed it. And unfortunately, what I did see is a bunch of you actually left. So I lost a bunch of subscribers on that day when I released that Hawaii trip. I guess, you know, here's what I'll ask. So there's that one thing I asked you to put in the comments section. One more thing, if you could, if any of you have any idea why that would turn people off, why that video would have switched it for somebody and said, you know what, I'm out, I've had enough. Because there was a pretty good number of people that decided to walk away from the channel after watching that video. And really, it's consistent with how we live. It's about living life. It's about spending time with family. It's about getting the best out of each and every day. And that's what it was. We lived it. But not everybody loved that video for some reason. So anyway, I'd like to hear your thoughts on that as well. But guess what? You know what? Next week, we'll be back. And we'll be back on a mission to do daily vlogs again, or daily chats. We're going to do the walk and talk because, let's face it, the hustle and the grind aren't really what they're all chalked up to be. And, you know, after years in the industry that I really enjoyed the first couple decades, if I can say. But then I started to see the entanglement and the noise that goes on in the corporate world, and it's interesting because it's always very passive aggressive. You know, things are happening, things are said, but they're said with a smile on the face. But it's kind of getting it in the back at the same time. That's kind of how they seem to operate in that world. And when you see that and you're so like, well, that was an uncomfortable, passive-aggressive comment. It's very intentional, believe it. But it doesn't matter. That's all in the past. Now we're living our lives moving forward. And I'd love to hear more from each and every one of you. But thanks so much, again, for all those comments and all of the wonderful support. We will be back next week to do our daily walk and talks. Again, everybody, talking about life, talking about what's going on in daily events and how they impact us. See, because everything that happens, Walmart, if it shuts down, it's going to have an impact to us because the affordability, the box stores help affordability. So if a big box store goes down, that impacts us indirectly. So we're going to talk about that, and we're going to talk about some of what's, you know, the world events and how that sort of ties and relates to us and our lifestyle and affordability and retirement, because it does have an impact. We see things go on. General Motors on the verge of shutting down. Does that mean much? Well, it's not happening, by the way, just FYI. But hypothetically, if that were to happen, that would have an impact because probably 20% of you drive vehicles from General Motors. What would that mean for repairs, for parts replacements? See, it all has an impact. In some ways good, some ways not so good. So anyway, with all of that said, I hope you all have a wonderful weekend. We'll see you back on Monday. Have a great one, everybody. Talk to you real soon. Bye-bye.